Hey, this is Jungle Jenna, and this is my review of Signs, which came out in 2002 and stars Mel Gibson, Joaquin Phoenix, Rory Culkin, Abigail Breslin, and is directed by M. Night Shyamalan. So, I have a very long history with Signs. I saw it in theaters when I was 10 years old. My mom and dad had gone to see it with their respective spouses, my stepmom and stepdad, and I really desperately wanted to see it. I begged them to take me to see it too. So one day after school, my mom, she took me to go see Signs, and the theater was completely empty. And when the movie was over, I was so terrified that I ran out of the theater. Like, I literally ran. And I tried to get out through the door, but the door was locked. And so I was like frantically tugging on the door, trying to get out, believing that I was locked inside. And then meanwhile, my mom just walks through the correct door and is like, okay, Jenna, it's just all in your head. And so that began my long history of Signs being the creepiest alien movie that I have ever seen to date. I watched the movie about a week ago with my mom because I had watched the Chris Stuckman's analysis of the movie, and it sort of rekindled my interest in seeing it again. I have seen it a couple of times since seeing it in the theaters, but it had been a really long time, probably close to 10 years since the last time I saw it. And once again, I was completely freaked out by it, and since that time I saw it a week ago, I've barely been able to sleep, and I keep looking over my shoulder thinking that I'm going to see an alien standing behind me, which I know is like completely ridiculous, but still, like, that movie just gives me the heebie jeebies. So, what I liked about Signs: number one, the suspense. The pace is deliciously slow and it is oh so intense. There are so many scenes where you don't see, basically, the aliens are absent from the scene, so it's left to your imagination as to what's going on. And that really increases the suspense and makes things freakier when you actually do end up seeing the aliens at the end of the movie. I would have to say that the scene where Graham and Meryl uh, chase the alien around the house thinking that it's a neighborhood kid, and then the alien jumps onto the roof and then ends up, running past the swings and into the cornfields. That's probably the freakiest part of the movie for me, like in terms of the suspense. And then also when Graham goes to Ray's house, the man who accidentally killed his wife, and he ends up chopping off the alien's fingers. Like that moment where the hand slides out from under the door and the nails click on the tile or on the floor, whatever it's made out of. That part is so freaky. The second thing I liked about this movie is the score. The music is fabulous and it's really intense. It's part of what freaks me out every time. So the movie starts out with opening credits with the score, and it's very intense, and it kind of gives you a taste of what the movie's going to be like. But I think the music really captures just that feeling of terror, going through an alien invasion. And every time I listen to the music, even just without the movie, like, it just gives me chills every time. The third thing I liked about the movie was Mel Gibson's acting. Even though the other actors in the movie are very good, I found that Mel Gibson was a standout for me. Especially just his whole journey of losing his faith and then reconnecting with God, I thought was really moving. Even if, like, you're not a religious person, I think that the story itself is very touching. And I would say that the most moving part with Graham, where it actually made me cry, was at the end when you think that the alien has killed his son, who's played by Rory Culkin, but then he says, Dad, did someone save me? And then at that moment, Mel Gibson's character just like completely breaks down and he starts to cry, and that part like always gets me every time. Like, I start to cry too. The fourth thing I love about this movie is that it focuses on one family, and it focuses on just their perspective of what going through an alien invasion would be like. And all of the footage that you see of the aliens on the news and the UFOs, it seems very realistic and true to like what it would actually be like if you were going through it yourself. Signs is similar to movies like A Quiet Place because it does focus on one family who lives on a farm, who is isolated from other people, and these aliens are out to get them. But I think that Signs is a much more effective film than A Quiet Place. I reviewed A Quiet Place a couple of months ago. Um, it was pretty recent, and I liked the movie, but A Quiet Place just didn't stick with me the way that Signs does. I think Signs is just has carries this emotional punch that is lacking from A Quiet Place, and I feel so much more emotionally connected to the characters and find the story relatable. The fifth thing I loved about this movie was the design of the aliens. Let's get this straight. The aliens in this movie just straight up terrify me, and they freak me out every time. And I have to like make this active effort to reframe them in my mind afterwards so that way I don't like so that I can actually get some sleep. But the aliens in Signs are shadowy, predatory, threatening creatures that lurk in the darkness. And I love that even when they're revealed, they're partially hidden by shadow. So it looks like they have these beady little eyes that are glistening in the darkness. And it's just so menacing. But at the same time, you can also understand the alien at the end of the movie, his motivation, because the aliens leave, they're wounded behind, and he's one of the remaining who's left behind. And so he's in this desperate situation where he's by himself and he doesn't have his kind with him. And so he has to basically go up against this family and appear as though he's threatening and menacing, to to have the upper hand in the situation. So you can kind of get the sense that the aliens are intelligent and they have like a method to their madness, which I just love, and it makes it them that much more freaky. Like I don't care if they're easily defeated by water. That part of the movie does not bother me at all because the suspense aside from that completely holds up. And the only time the CGI doesn't hold up with the aliens is when they're revealed in full light, when the alien at the end knocks into the water and it spills on his shoulder, and you kind of get a close up of his face and his body, and you can tell that it's like totally CGI. That's like the only time that the aliens look hokey, and the rest of the time they're very well designed. And just the simplicity of them and how they're not complicated like other aliens in other movies, that just it makes them so much more terrifying. And they kind of mimic like the classic idea of what aliens look like, where they're green and skinny and they have big heads, but they look realistic. So yeah, the aliens in this movie are my favorite of all the aliens I've ever seen in an alien movie before. One thing that I didn't really like in Signs, it's not like a huge gripe, it doesn't take away from my enjoyment of the movie, but during the alien invasion where the aliens are trying to break into the Hess's house, um, there's uh there's a scene where Rory Culkin's character ends up, getting snatched by one of the aliens briefly, and it triggers an asthma attack. And during this entire asthma attack, the aliens stop like banging on the doors and trying to get in to get the family. And then they promptly go to sleep for 12 hours and wake up the next day. And it's like, how could you sleep through an alien invasion? I live in Florida and I go through hurricanes all the time. And every time I go through a hurricane, I can't sleep a wink the whole night. So to me, that just seems really kind of unrealistic. And it just is the whole invasion part just seems kind of short lived because they only like try to get in to get them for a certain period of time before, giving up, and then suddenly they're gone. So those things just, I didn't like really notice it because I was so into the movie, but then thinking about it later, it's like, okay, well, how could they have gone to sleep during the alien invasion, and why did the aliens stop trying to invade their house? So those were things that I wish like would have been carried out like through the movie in some way, like it kind of would have heightened the tension. And then things that I would have liked to see, but weren't necessarily gripes, like it actually kind of increases the suspense of the movie and is part of what makes it effective. You don't like really know what happens to characters like the one female sheriff played by Cherry Jones. You don't know what happens to the pharmacist girl who gives her confession to Graham. You don't know what happens to the couple from the bookstore where the husband was convinced that the whole UFO business was a hoax and that it was just a means to sell soda. And so you don't like it would have been nice to know what happened to them, and it's kind of sad like you don't know whether or not they died. So I guess that's like part of the suspense, like I said. Signs is by far my favorite alien movie and is like one of my favorite scary movies. Or it's probably my favorite scary movie, I gotta say. I want to watch it more, but because of the way that it affects me, I feel like I have to like watch it at very specific times when I know that I'm not going to be as scared and when I know I can get some sleep and I'm not going to be paranoid about aliens stalking me. So, yeah. That's my review for Signs and I hope you really enjoyed it. And if you want to see me do reviews of specific movies, then just leave requests down in the comments section and I'll get to those as long as like they're not too gory or violent or whatever. But anyway, thank you so much for your review. Thank you so much for watching my review. Have a nice day. Bye.